Hello, this is Rachel from 7 in All, and today I'm going to walk you through my process for planning and preparing for the first unit of Sequence 1. I'm going to be using Sequence 1 for my child's first grade year, and it covers quite a few subjects. You're going to be seeing that as I walk through the planning process. And I do want to note, this is planning for the very first unit. So basically, this is about as complicated as the planning is going to get. I know that as I go through as I progress through the school year, the planning is going to get quicker, easier, simpler, and I'll kind of talk about what I mean about that as I go through. You'll see that some things are not things that need to be planned every single week. Now you'll notice that I'm filming right in front of an empty cubbyhole in my IKEA Kallax bookshelf. This is intentional, and this is because this is a key part of my organizational system for homeschooling resources. This bookshelf is right next to the table where we do schoolwork, so I use the cubbies as organizational tools to make sure the resources that I'm pulling from, that I am needing on an active day-to-day basis throughout the week, are right here. And I tend to assign different cubbies to different types of books. So this cubby is going to be all the books and all the cards, the resources that I need to pull from for our Gentle and Classical Sequence 1 week. So the goal is that by the end of this video, this cubby is not going to be empty. It's going to have all the resources I need so that throughout the week, I'm not going to be going running and looking for different books or different resources. Now I'm going to turn the camera toward the table so that I can start pulling out the resources that I need for planning and walk you through the whole process, show you the books that we're going to be reading this week. Now, I am an affiliate for Gentle and Classical, and if you are interested in purchasing Sequence 1 or the other Gentle and Classical resources I'll show you in this video on Mission as well as Morning Virtues, I will leave links to all of those down in the description below. Let's get started. All right, so my very first step will be to pull out the teacher's guide, which is a free download from Gentle and Classical. You can purchase the whole package for Sequence 1, but if you just want to get a glimpse at what it looks like, you can download the teacher's guide for free. So I'm getting the teacher's guide, and then for additional help with planning, I have the student notebook, which has the suggested activities. In case I want to add any extras, I can look at those. And I also did pull out the grids, just so I can get a glimpse of how it all comes together during the week. The grids are a separate purchase, very inexpensive. I think like $5 for the add-on. But we're going to get started with planning for Unit 1. Let's see if I can get in a little closer here. So for planning, I am just going to go through each subject and each section and figure out what I need to pull out as far as my resources. So we'll come back to Morning Virtues in a bit because it's a little bit separate. First, I'm just going to stick to the parts that are integrated, like that are part of Sequence 1. So Knowing God Better, our Bible section, we need to have our Bible storybook, and we also need to have our catechism card, and we need theology. So I need to pull out those books and make sure I have those on my shelf. Here's the Bible storybook. And again, this is why I'm saying it's going to be a little bit more work to plan the very first week, because a lot of the books, like this one, are going to be used throughout the entire year. So I've got this book, I put it on my shelf, and then I just keep pulling it out throughout the year. Here's our Bible storybook. And then as far as cards, so Catechism has its own card. Let's see that here. Catechism has its own card. And then Grammar and Spelling, which is down here. They have their card. We have our geography card for the location of the 2 states we're learning. History card, and then I'm adding in these cards, which are not part of Gentle and Classical. These are a separate resource that's actually available on my website, just for some pretty state cards to add to our geography studies, Alabama and Alaska. So I'm going to pull out all the memory statement cards and put them into one little pouch for the week. I use these type of pouches, zipper pouches, to organize my cards. So I have all the cards in these separated by subject, and then each unit, or whenever I need a new card, I just pull out those new cards for the unit and put them in a pouch that's our active use cards. And you don't always need a new card. So you can see this catechism question is for both units 1 and 2. And also the history card is for units 1 and 2. So I won't always be changing out every single card. But today, setting up all my cards, I'll just put them in a stack for right now. See if we need to add any more. So we've got the Bible storybook. I've got theology already on my bookshelf. I just have to move it to a different shelf now. Then we need 50 famous stories retold. This is another book that's going to be worked throughout the year. Very, very short 1 to 2 page stories. All right, and then for our second literature book, we're going through Fables by Arnold Lobel. This is another book with very, very short readings, just 1 page stories with a interesting picture to go with them and kind of a little proverb or a lesson. And that doesn't last through the whole year, but it does last for quite a while. So that will be on our shelf for a while. For the language section, you don't need to get any books out, just those rules. And there are cards for the spelling list and the sight words. I did not print those because we're not really going to be using this element with my son. He's a little more advanced in his reading and spelling, so while we will go over the spelling rules, I'm going to have something different for spelling for him. You'll also notice I'm ignoring the science section here. We have used Gentle and Classical Nature Volume 1 and 2. We love them, but we did already do them fairly recently, so we're going to use a different science this year. Then for the U.S. Geography section, she has a book recommended, The 50 States. I don't have that book. I have a book that kind of accomplishes a similar idea. This was just a book I already had. Here's the flexibility of this program. There is the ability to replace books with different books as you want to. So this is a similar type of book that goes over one state and has different kind of fun facts and interesting things to note about that state on just 1 page. The other book I think is maybe a little bit more modern and more infographic style. It looks like a great book too. It's just I already had this one, so this was a convenience or affordability decision to just use the book I have. So I'm pulling out that book, and that book we will be using throughout the entire year. Then moving on to the history section, we're going to be learning about explorers in this portion, and the explorers will last for 2 units. So you have a picture book for each week of the unit, and again, this is one where I replaced with something different. I don't have that specific book, but I have a different picture book focused on Columbus. This is Columbus by Demi, which we had in our collection and was, I've heard, highly recommended by some friends. So this will be the book that we're using for Columbus for the first week, and then in Unit 2 you have a different picture book also focused on Columbus, kind of from a different perspective, Encounter by Jane Yolen. I'll just go ahead and get out both of these picture books now, knowing that the second one is used on the same topic in week 2. Now, history is where I see myself kind of needing to, or being interested in adding a little bit more activities. So at this point in my planning, I'm also going to look at my shelves in the history section and just see maybe what else we might have as far as resources or what other activities we want to do, because my family has been homeschooling a long time, so we do have some variety of resources to pull from. So I actually do have a fair amount of extras for this topic of explorers because it's a popular topic in history. So one book I'm going to add is Magellan's World, another picture book. I'll just give you a quick glimpse inside. There's a map of there's an old map and then a map of his journey over here. And then it goes through kind of Magellan's story with some vivid and interesting pictures, a lot of text as well. This is a longer picture book for sure. But since Magellan is one of the explorers mentioned, I figured might as well include that. I also have this book, which is a really neat book that kind of opens up different exploration crafts to show inside and talks about the details for different explorations. Now, this book we're not going to go through this whole book. It just has one small section on the journeys of Columbus and Magellan, kind of in this period of exploration. So we're going to go over that section. Other parts are from totally different times of history and different periods of travel. So this is going to be a book we'll use throughout different periods of history study. We can just pull it out again. Also for history, we're going to be filling out a timeline. This is the School Nest History Timeline book. You can get a little glimpse inside. Let's see, 1492 is probably somewhere around where we'll be adding Columbus's journey. I do want to print out some pictures related to the explorations or explorers we're talking about in this unit. So anything like that I know I need to do, that I probably need to get to my computer to do something, I'm going to make a note of it in this. This is also from School Nest. This is my planner. So to-dos I'm going to write here, and I'll just say I need to print timeline images. Yes, I'm a lefty, which makes it not so easy to see my writing. Print timeline images. We have Columbus and Magellan in this unit. So I'll make a note of that so that when I'm at my computer having computer time, I can do that. I will also link to these School Nest timelines and planner down below if you want to see more from them. Then anything else? Is there anything else for history? I will go ahead and check out the student notebook that she has, because she has suggested activities. She has suggested expansion books, which we don't have any of these expansion books. That's fine. But I can look at the activities. The spice activity looks like one that would be pretty easy for us to add in. So I think at the bottom, I think I'll go ahead and at the bottom of my list, because I won't have this many to-dos. Something down here, I'll write in activity ideas. So like just pull out spices from our spice drawer and talk about them, talk about where they come from, talk about how much they used to cost versus how much they cost now. Some spices that used to be very, very expensive are no longer so expensive, but there are still spices that are quite expensive today. Compass. Might be fun to do a compass activity of some kind. I think my son might have a compass, so we could talk about that, talk about how to use it. And that sounds pretty good. This is the student notebook, so maybe spices and compass. So I'll jot down something about using a compass. I don't feel the need like I gotta be super detailed or have a super amazing epic plan on how compasses work, because my sons are pretty young. This doesn't have to be the most detailed. You need to learn everything about history. This is an overview. Also throughout the unit, there are some activities in the student notebook. So here we have a map on the spice routes and the explorers involved. Here we have some copy work that they can do, and then a little notebooking page that they can do as well. So just a few activity pages, and those are scheduled throughout in the grid. Kind of gives you an idea of when to do those pages in the notebook. One more history resource that I can pull from. I have a handful of different editions of history pockets. Again, these are a hand-me-down resource. They are aimed at grades a little bit older than my children, so not everything is going to be age appropriate. But of the different explorers talked about in these, there is Christopher Columbus. So I can go through and pull out some interesting things. Like maybe we want to read these fast facts or add this list to our notebook. We have a little map of his. Let's just focus on Columbus journeys. Hey, if we want to do a compass activity, there's a little activity in here to design your own compass. That maybe, hey, I'll put this in for the compass activity and just copy this. This is kind of cool. This is a it talks about different jobs that were needed on boats for these explorers expeditions. So maybe this is something that we can just pull out and read, or maybe I copy it and give it to my son so he can keep it in his notebook. I can decide that later, but I will jot down that we have, okay, so maybe the compass activity can come from the History Pockets book, and then there's also jobs on ships from History Pockets. So those are a few extras that can be added on. I think we are going to have plenty to do just with the books that we have. You don't need to necessarily be adding extras, but also I'm kind of just looking at my shelves, seeing what I have and seeing what I can easily add in. So that's all the main parts of Sequence 1 itself. So now I'm going to go and look at morning virtues, what I need for morning virtues. And this is where we're getting our read aloud, where we're getting our memory work for hymns, for Bible study, where we're doing our artist and composer study. So you are intended to be using one morning virtues unit for 6 units or about 6 weeks. So we're going to start with courage. You can find the digital version of the Courage Morning Virtues Unit available for free on Gentle and Classical, so you can check that out. But I'm going to take a look inside to help with my planning. So you're scheduled to read 2 read-alouds for each Morning Virtues unit. And we are going to be reading The 100 Dresses. My mom has this, so I need to make a note to get this book from my mom's house. 100 Dresses. It's very handy to be a second-generation homeschooler. So I don't have that book, but I know exactly where I can grab it. And the other read aloud scheduled is The Sign of the Beaver. I've read this, I read that growing up. For me, with my oldest being 6 years old in first grade, I don't think we're really at the ideal age to do this chapter book yet, so I'm going to be replacing it with a different read aloud, and I'm going to have a video on all of my read aloud picks for the year, which incorporate some for morning virtues and also some different ones just aimed more at younger kids. One option, if you don't have access to this book, is to look at the other chapter book recommendations. And I have several of these. We have all 3 of these. But again, most of these are not really what I would say for first grade, and even in their recommendations, they're a little bit more for older kids. So I'm not going to be pulling from these recommendations. I will pull from my list of the chapter books I wanted to do for first grade. But I am going to look at these picture books. I don't have any in my collection, but I will send this list to the library and see if the library has any of these. And these are maybe books that I would pull in more aimed toward my pre-K son, like simple books like Brave Irene, and they can maybe be our bedtime stories or just for fun stories. Now there's a schedule in here for read aloud and the art and music loop. You don't have to necessarily be looking at this because, dun dun dun, you can go and look at the Sequence 1 grids because your art and music studies and your morning virtues read aloud are scheduled within these grids. So you don't necessarily have to worry about juggling a different schedule. Then we're going to be learning about the artist Renoir. So I do happen to have one of these biographies on Renoir from this series, which is really, really awesome. I wish I had more editions in this series. Getting to know the world's greatest artists, to me, it's like just as much as is great to know about the artist without being overwhelmingly challenging or full of information and a lot of pictures of their artwork. So I'm really happy that I have one for Renoir. And this will be the week that I know we're introducing Renoir. But I know we don't have to learn everything about him this week. This unit is over 6 weeks. So we've got quite a few weeks to be accustomed to Renoir's works and learn a little bit about him. And then our composer is Beethoven. I don't have any books on Beethoven. They do give a recommendation from the same series, get the Beethoven book. I don't have that, unfortunately. It'd be fun if I did. But we can read this for an introduction to Beethoven, and then I'm going to make a note in my planner to add a Spotify playlist for Beethoven to my library so I can easily be accessing some music by Beethoven. We'll probably listen to some extra pieces, just like during quiet times, during play times, to become more familiar. But these are the 4 works that we're going to be really focusing on. So they give you the exact titles, and you can listen to those on Spotify or something else. Then they have a couple of handicraft ideas, just 2 handicrafts. So you got 6 weeks. That sounds about reasonable that we could handle 2 handicrafts in 6 weeks, right? For this one, I'm going to need to assign my boys to collect sticks from the park. We'll need sticks and some kind of twine or string to make rafts. That sounds super fun, especially if we can float them afterwards. So I think that handicraft will be a huge hit. This one, I have to admit, scares me a little bit. I've never done macrame, so that needs specifically macrame cord, which I will have to order. That's why it's a good thing to look at these early. And I have masking tape, scissors, but wooden beads would not be a bad idea to have. So I'm going to add macrame cord. So this will probably have to be online shopping because we don't really have craft stores. Macrame cord, and then some big chunky wooden beads for that. That will be something new to me. I've never done macrame. Have you done macrame? I've done like different knot tying crafts, friendship bracelets and all that, you know. Then there are the memory work portion of Morning Virtues it has a menu. So I have the printed edition. So all of these were printed nicely for me. So I stuck them in a little folder that we can use as a menu. This is our hymn, How Firm a Foundation. I'm really excited to get my boys singing hymns. I grew up with hymns, and I'm excited for them to learn them. Here's our Bible passage, which with an older child, maybe you're memorizing the whole of Psalm 27, but we will probably do more of a portion with my sons. I don't know, we might do the whole. Then there's a few poems that are on this theme of courage. So again, depending on the age of your child or your goals, you could do memorization, or you could just do reading them repeatedly, discussing them, getting to know the ideas, sonnet, and a folk song as well. How can I keep from singing? I also put in the menu our works that we're studying by Renoir. Beautiful, just 4 works. These nice, beautiful prints on good quality paper. So that will be our menu. It's not actually a menu, it's a folder. Morning Virtues also comes with several memory statement cards that go along with what they're teaching. So the manners and hygiene connection is connected to flag etiquette and honoring veterans, like kind of patriotic respect, honoring those who've served. So this is for days 1 through 14, or roughly the first 3 weeks that you're using Morning Virtues. Then this card is for the second 3 weeks. They do show a US flag here, but pretty much all countries do have rules on flag etiquette, treating the flag respectfully. Then here, while you're reading Psalm 27, this is the option for younger children. If you don't feel like they're quite ready to memorize the whole psalm, you could work on these 3 verses for the first 3 weeks, and then you can work on these 3 verses for the last 3 weeks. So I will put these cards together with my other cards that are our active memory statement cards in use. And that's what I needed to prep for Morning Virtues. Now, the next element that I am including is the On Mission, also available from Gentle and Classical. They schedule you to use 3 issues of On Mission throughout the year. So you're using 1 issue for every 12 units, or roughly 12 weeks. So you're not like necessarily rushing through, having to do a lot with this every week. It's something that you're gradually weaving in. And I believe there's basically 1 day scheduled to go over On Mission content in each week. So you could do it that way. You could weave in, you could maybe like find it on a map a couple days a week, or discuss it a couple days a week. You can add it in extras, of course, but it's not like a huge amount that you're trying to do, because you do get to go through this issue over 12 weeks. They have a handful of book recommendations that you can include. I don't have any of these books, and I don't know that our library will have any, but I will put in a library request for, hey, do you have any picture books on Vietnam? I do have this book I pulled out from my collection, which is kind of connected. I think it's about actually a Laotian refugee in a refugee camp in Thailand around the same time period as the Vietnam War. So it's kind of all connected, all these Southeast Asian countries that are close together. So I'll pull that in, I'll put it on the shelf. But I'll try to give you a little glimpse at On Mission. There's a lot in this little magazine. This is one I highly recommend getting the physical version and not the digital version if you can, because it's printed like a magazine. It's very full color, glossy, so I think it's one that doesn't work so well when we have to print it out. Exploring Vietnam. Hey, hornbills. I love hornbills. Those are so cool when we see them. But they have different topics, and in your little guide, it will tell you what topic, or okay, this week we're going over the history pages, or this week we're going over geography pages, and you can read that. So here's geography pages. Geography of Vietnam. Ooh, beautiful, beautiful. Hey, maybe we can plan like a fall break trip to Vietnam or something to go along with this. Our family is based in Southeast Asia. So I've never yet been to Vietnam though. We always say we'll go one of these days. We have a little map here with some of the points of interest. So I'll get my boys really interested, and then we'll plan a trip. Pangolin, so you get a creature feature. 1 week you can go over creatures. There's a lot in this, so I think this will be really fun to go over, and I like that you get 12 weeks to go over one country. Really take your time in getting to know it, getting familiar. Games, housing, traditional clothing, the wedding photos. Oh yes, yes, wedding photos, silk painting, so you can even incorporate handicrafts within this. So you can add your extras, but there's plenty in here. So I have that. I just have one little extra book. I don't really have any extras to go with that country specifically. Oh, one thing I do need to check is that there are digital resources for each for each issue of On Mission. So I should check the Vietnam digital resources, see if there's any activity pages I'll want to print out. Digital resources. And then for anything that I print, like if I have to make copies from history pockets, or if I'm printing timeline images, I'll have one of these little plastic folders. I'll keep it right there on my bookshelf with all the rest of my books, so I can easily access the timeline figures or the printout for a history pockets activity or printout for a Vietnam activity. Anything like that will stay right there. The key to my homeschool style is to make sure all the resources I need are easy to access, because when they're easy to access, it can happen. When you have to run around like a chicken with your head cut off trying to find what you need, it's not going to happen. All right, I've done my planning, and like I mentioned, this did definitely take longer than it would normally take on a weekly basis, because I was getting out books we're going to use for the whole year. I was setting up for our first time using Morning Virtues. I'm setting up for 12 weeks of using the same Vietnam issue, so it's definitely a little bit more this week. Other weeks I'm going to expect this to get faster and more automatic. There won't always be this much to do. But now I'm going to fill in my little bookshelf, and I'll take you over there to show off the end result. All right, and this is the end result. Remember I showed you that empty cubby? We are exactly what I wanted to be, having all the books that I need for getting started with Sequence 1 right here on this cubby. No problems. There was one book I forgot to show you, which is Tree in the Trail. This is also related to history. It's a thin book you're reading throughout the whole year. 1 page a day. Now, this might look like a lot of books to get started with, but remember, a lot of these you're reading 1 short story, 1 page for the Bible, for the literature books. The heftiest reads are going to be the picture books for history. Those are really the only longer reads, so I'm not too worried about the amount of reading. We are a homeschool family that loves to read. This is what we got, and then I also have my little list of the few things I have left to do as far as printing or getting that 100 dresses book from my mom's house. And I also have my list of extra activity ideas that I can weave in at will right here in my School Nest planner. So I am all set. Please let me know in the comments if you found this video helpful or if you have any further questions. I did promise you a whole lot of links to resources that I was mentioning, like the 50 state flashcards, like the Jet Tongue Classical resources. I will be linking to all those below. Oh, also the School Nest notebooks that I use. I'll link to those below. And please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more nerdy homeschool videos just like this one. Bye!